Welcome, everyone, to vpod.ai. I'm your host, Mike, and I am joined today by our resident expert, Susan. You can sponsor this podcast for just $25. Your message will be featured across major platforms like Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, and more. If you're interested, visit vpod.ai to get started today.
Hey, it's great to be here. I am really looking forward to unpacking all this material with you.
Yeah, me too. So, usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this underlying expectation of precision, right? Like, it feels kind of like engineering.
Oh, exactly.
You
Yeah.
break your arm, the x-ray shows that jagged white line,
Yeah.
and the doctor just points at the screen and says, there it is, that's the problem.
Right. The problem is completely isolated, and the solution is pretty binary. It's either broken or it's not. You slap a cast on it and you just move on.
Right. But when you step into the world of the human mind, especially into the messy reality of mental resilience, discipline, and trauma, suddenly that x-ray machine is, well, it's completely useless.
Yeah, it doesn't apply at all.
No, not at all. We are looking at a landscape that is incredibly murky and honestly deeply personal. So today we're exploring the raw reality of confronting fear and building discipline. And we're looking at this through the lived experiences of an elite Navy SEAL and a world record wingsuit pilot.
Which is just a wild combination of experiences to draw from, honestly.
It really is. And our mission for you today, for the listener, is to extract the daily actions from something as mundane as doing the laundry to leaping off literal mountains that help you separate what you can actually control from the absolute noise that is just wasting your life.
And that separation, it absolutely has to be the starting point. I mean, before anyone can even think about building superhuman discipline or even just having a moderately productive Tuesday, you have to run a strict audit on where your mental energy is actually flowing.
Yeah, you really do.
And there is this profound visual exercise we're looking at that maps this out just perfectly.
I love this exercise because it completely changes how you perceive your own day. So imagine taking a standard piece of paper and drawing a heavy line right down the middle.
Right.
The left side becomes your concern column and the right side is your influence column.
And what really stands out when you actually do this, like when you physically map your mental bandwidth to physical space, is the sheer, terrifying disproportion of those two sides.
It's crazy.
It is. If you look at the physical volume those columns should take up, based on where our attention actually goes, the concern column is like the size of a massive dining room table.
A massive table. And the influence column.
It's the size of a pin drop on that same table.
A literal pin drop, which is insane. And yet, if you were to write down all the things that keep you awake, staring at the ceiling at 2 in the morning, they almost universally land on the left side of that paper.
Oh, 100%. They just clutter up that massive table of concern.
Yeah. Exactly. It's the 24-hour news cycle spinning out of control. It's algorithmic social media feeds, shifting global economic events, things you have absolutely zero direct control over.
Bro.
So what actually belongs on the right side in that tiny pin drop of influence?
Well, only you. I mean, that is the entire list. It contains yourself and nothing else.
That's sobering. Just you.
Right. It is how you choose to speak to yourself in your own head, how you manage your immediate time, and the physical actions you take in your immediate environment, You have absolutely no control over what happens in the wider world, but you retain total unyielding control over how you respond to it.
But it's so hard to do that, right?
I do it.
Because we're just naturally drawn to the big table.
We are. We are evolutionarily wired to scan the horizon for threats, which is exactly why we gravitate to the concern column. But indulging that instinct today just leads to total paralysis.
It really does. And I think the ultimate occupant of that massive concern column has to be social media.
Oh, without a doubt.
There's this wild anecdote here about 2 elite operators. These are guys who have passed the most agonizing, grueling military selection processes on the planet. And they challenge each other to a screen time competition.
Because they check their phone analytics and realize they're clocking something insane, like 4.5 hours of screen time a day.
Right. So they make a bet to drive it down to under an hour.
And they actually manage to succeed, but only temporarily.
Yeah, only for a bit. One of them actually gets it down to 30 minutes a day on his phone, right?
Yeah. His strategy is to force himself to use platforms like Instagram exclusively on a desktop laptop. And he discovers very quickly that it's an incredibly clunky experience.
I can imagine. Instagram on a desktop is awful.
Exactly. The interface isn't intuitive with a mouse. It's annoying to scroll. So the dopamine hit is just, it's gone. He just closes the laptop and moves on with his day, and his mental health drastically improves.
But the kicker is what happens next. Because 60 days later, They're completely back to their old habits.
Yeah.
Just scrolling with their thumbs, losing hours to the void. I mean, these are individuals forged in the absolute fires of elite military discipline. Guys who can endure freezing surf and sleep deprivation, and they still revert to the doom scroll.
It's wild. And the consequence of that failure tells us something profound about the architecture of modern technology. Social media operates as the ultimate addiction, but not really in the way we traditionally think of one.
What do you mean?
Well, think about being heavily intoxicated with alcohol or drugs, right?
Yeah.
You lose track of reality, your motor functions fail, and your inhibitions drop. It overtakes your entire system.
Right. It's a total system takeover.
Exactly. But social media scrolling operates on what we can call a low-resolution addiction.
A low-resolution addiction. Okay, explain the mechanism behind that, because it sounds incredibly insidious.
It is insidious, mostly because it doesn't demand 100% of your cognitive load. Like, you are perfectly aware that you are wasting your time.
Oh yeah, you don't feel joyful at all.
Exactly. You might even actively dislike what you're doing. You're sitting on the couch thinking, why am I doing this? I feel miserable.
Yep, I've been there.
Right. Yet the platform provides just enough of a microdopamine drip that your brain allows you to run 2 tracks at once. You can sort of nod along to a conversation with your spouse or keep an eye on your kid playing on the rug while simultaneously remaining totally tethered to the screen.
Wow. It's almost like, you know when you get a really bad knockout flu?
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
You're in bed, totally incapacitated. The world stops, you know you're sick, and you just surrender to rest.
Right.
But low-grade cold doesn't totally ruin your day. You can still drag yourself to work. You can still vaguely function. So you just tolerate it. You tolerate letting it siphon away your vitality hour by hour.
That is exactly what social media feels like.
Right. Because it doesn't instantly destroy your life in one afternoon like a major substance addiction might. We just let it bleed our time away.
We tolerate the bleed. And the challenge becomes, if you actually manage to cure that low-grade cold-like, if you reclaim an hour of your day from the concern column, how do you manage the actual time you've won back?
Right. How do you operate inside that tiny pin drop of influence?
Exactly.
Well, there's an incredibly relatable concept here about everyday friction, which is the toilet paper rule.
Oh, this one is great.
We have all seen this. Imagine a bathroom where kids, instead of taking the 2 seconds to plop an Epper cardboard toilet paper roll off the holder and throw in the trash, they just grab a brand new roll and set it on top.
Yep.
Then another. Until eventually, there's a literal balancing pyramid of empty cardboard rolls stacked up precariously next to the sink.
It's a humorous image, but it highlights a fundamental flaw in human behavior. The underlying mantra here is, it always takes longer to do it wrong.
It always takes longer to do it wrong.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Because building a pyramid of trash, having it inevitably get knocked over behind the toilet, and then having to contort yourself to fish it out while someone is yelling for a new roll, it objectively consumes more time and physical energy than just executing the task correctly the very first time.
Okay, wait, hold on. I've got to play devil's advocate for a second for the listener.
Go for it.
If I leave a coffee mug in the sink instead of putting it in the dishwasher, or I leave a shirt inside out in the laundry basket, are you really telling me my life is on a downward trajectory? I mean, it sounds a little less like discipline and a bit more like neurosis.
I get that. It sounds like an exaggeration when you look at an isolated coffee mug. But we have to look at how discipline is actually formed in the brain.
Okay.
Discipline isn't a massive, superhuman cape you just pull out of the closet when a crisis hits. It is built entirely on micro-discipline. Leaving a dish in the sink seems trivial, but there is hard neurobiology dictating why these tiny choices matter.
Really? Hard neurobiology.
Yes. There is a specific structure in the brain called the anterior mid-cingulate cortex.
Okay, the anterior mid-cingulate cortex. So this is where the science actually backs up the habit.
Absolutely. The anterior mid-cingulate cortex essentially acts as the body's tenacity center. And neuroscientists have discovered that this structure can physically grow at hypertrophies, much like a bicep after lifting weights.
Oh, wow.
But it only happens under one very specific condition. It only grows when you do something that you specifically do not want to do.
Meaning, if I absolutely love running and I go out and run 5 miles, I'm getting a cardiovascular benefit, but I'm not growing this specific part of my brain.
Exactly. The metabolic cost isn't there for the brain. Because you enjoy it, your brain isn't fighting default pathways.
Interesting.
But if you are exhausted from a long day and you walk into the bathroom and see that empty toilet paper roll, and every fiber of your being wants to just leave it there.
Because it's so easy to just walk away.
Right. But you override that impulse and force yourself to walk it to the trash can. That tiny microscopic friction point is the barbell for your anterior mid-cingulate cortex.
That is fascinating.
Overriding the default behavior requires metabolic energy, which physically builds the neural architecture required to push through massive life challenges later. In fact, a robust anterior mid-cingulate cortex is actually the defining feature of superagers.
Superagers, like people who age really well.
Yeah, individuals who maintain incredibly sharp cognitive and physical abilities well into their 80s and 90s.
So how you do anything, really, is how you do everything. Those microdisciplines are the literal reps for your brain's tenacity center.
Exactly.
But I mean, there has to be a ceiling to microdiscipline, right? You can only pick up so many toilet paper rolls or do so many loads of laundry perfectly before the sheer ambient noise of a stressful life just overpowers your tenacity.
Yeah, you do reach a limit.
Like broken washing machines, unpaid bills, relationship friction. How do you reset a brain that is completely maxed out on the static of everyday life?
Well, for some individuals, hitting the reset button requires a physical extremity that temporarily matches and then overrides that internal noise. We see this powerfully in the mechanics of wingsuit base jumping.
Oh, man. The mechanics of this are absolutely wild.
They really are.
We are talking about standing on the edge of a bridge, 486 feet above the ground, wearing nothing but a nylon suit.
Right.
In normal skydiving, you jump out of a plane that's already moving at 100 miles an hour, so the suit pressurizes and inflates immediately. But in base jumping, it is a zero airspeed exit.
You're just dropping.
You push off a static object, and for the first 4 seconds, you are just a human falling like a rock. The suit feels completely sloppy and useless until gravity gives you enough speed for the ram air inlets to pressurize.
And then suddenly, you are flying at 120 miles per hour, sometimes mere inches off the tree canopy.
Which is insane.
The sensory overload is immense. It has been vividly described as licking the largest 9-volt battery you've ever licked.
That is quite the visual.
It really is a complete hijacking of the nervous system. But the physiological magic actually happens in the mind during the build-up to that jump.
Right, because about 1 minute out, as you're hiking up the trail or standing near the edge looking down, the entire BS of life just vaporizes.
Completely vanishes.
The argument you had with your boss, the emails you haven't answered, the leaky roof, none of it can exist in that space. You're forced into absolute hyper-focused presence because your physical survival literally depends on the execution of the next 3 seconds.
Exactly. The brain's survival mechanism completely overrides the prefrontal cortex's tendency to ruminate.
Wow.
When you are moments from a potential existential threat, the brain shuts down the default mode network, which is the system responsible for all that background static. It floods your body with norepinephrine and highly focused dopamine.
So you physically cannot worry about a broken washing machine.
You physically cannot. And surviving that extreme focus induces a psychological phenomenon known as a post-flow state.
And the post-flow state isn't just about chasing the next high, right?
No.
Because I think that's what a lot of people assume.
That is a huge misconception. People think extreme athletes are just adrenaline junkies trying to stay amped up all the time. The biology shows the exact opposite.
Really?
Yeah. Surviving that intense state causes a massive parasympathetic nervous system rebound. It drastically calibrates your time perception. It essentially turns the volume knob of life's static all the way down.
That sounds incredible, honestly.
It is. For months after a jump, individuals report feeling profoundly anchored, settled, and incredibly patient in mundane, everyday situations. The static is just gone.
But, and here's where I think it gets tricky.
Yeah.
What happens when someone survives a high-stakes situation like that and they confidently think to themselves, man, I completely nailed it, when the terrifying reality is that they just got away with it?
Yeah, that is the deadliest trap of extreme environments.
Yeah.
And it perfectly illustrates the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Right.
You might fly a wingsuit down a mountain, land safely, and think you're an absolute master. But perhaps you didn't account for ascending thermals, or you didn't realize the mountain was in the shade, which drastically changes the air pressure.
So you survived purely by luck, not skill.
Exactly. When your confidence outpaces your competence because you misattribute sheer luck to mastery, that is when the abyss opens up and swallows you.
You bring up a really crucial distinction there between skill and luck. But it also points to something heavier, I think. The difference between adversity we choose to face, like stepping off a bridge or doing a grueling workout, and the abyss that just finds us completely uninvited.
Yes, the rules of engagement change entirely when the adversity is uninvited. We have to differentiate between intense physical pain and profound emotional trauma because they attack the psyche in very different ways.
So true. Take the story of dealing with an excruciating physical issue, like an intestinal blockage. The pain was described as significantly worse than being shot in combat.
And what did this highly trained elite operator do?
He tried to tough it out silently. He was literally upside down in the passenger seat of a car in a Walgreens parking lot, sweating profusely, trying to pretend it was just a bad gas bubble.
Which is just wild to think about.
He had to be physically dragged to the emergency room by his spouse.
Yeah.
He learned the hard way that staying quiet about pain, trying to muscle through it alone, only ensures that your suffering is prolonged.
Exactly. Physical pain tests your endurance, but emotional pain strips away your armor completely.
Yeah, it's totally different.
Going through a soul-crushing, highly contentious 2-year divorce, or enduring an 18-month estrangement from a son where you try to drop off letters and simply watch your child peel out of the parking lot without even making eye contact.
Oh, man. That is heavy.
It is. That level of psychological pain forces a complete dismantling of the ego. It brings the agonizing realization that parents, including yourself, are just deeply flawed human beings doing the absolute best they can with the limited data they have.
And the heartbreaking reality is that sometimes even the best someone can do isn't enough to save them from the isolation.
No, it's not.
We really have to talk about the tragedy of Dave. In this elite community, Dave was the standard setter. He was the guy everyone looked up to.
The best of the best.
Right. If you met his standard, you knew you were performing at the highest possible level in the world. He held others to an incredibly high bar.
He held everyone to a high bar, but he held himself to an impossible one. The tragedy of Dave highlights a deadly psychological gap.
What kind of gap?
It's the immense chasm between how ultra-high performers view themselves internally and how the rest of the world perceives them. The external world saw Dave as an absolute titan, but internally, secretly, Dave was struggling profoundly with alcohol addiction and severe, crushing isolation.
It's so sad. He had brought what was described as a full sea bag of trauma from a difficult childhood into his high-stress military career.
Yeah.
And when that suppressed trauma finally met the quiet isolation of his life after leaving the military, it broke him. The cognitive dissonance was just too much.
He couldn't live with the reality that he couldn't meet his own impossibly perfect internal standards.
And he tragically took his own life, leaving behind a shattered community asking themselves, why didn't we know? What could we have done?
Dave's tragedy brings us to a vital psychological concept when dealing with trauma, burnout, and mental health. When your mind is under extreme duress, when cortisol and stress hormones are flooding your system for prolonged periods, you experience what we can call foggy goggles.
Foggy goggles.
Your cognitive appraisal of your own worth, your situation, and your reality becomes completely warped. You literally cannot trust your own thoughts.
Wow.
In those moments of deep crisis, raw independence is no longer a strength. It is a fatal liability. You have to borrow the clear vision of trusted friends. You have to let them navigate for you because you simply cannot see the road.
That makes me think of, you know, those DUI simulation goggles they'd make kids wear in high school health class?
Oh, yeah, the plastic ones.
Yeah, you put them on and you try to reach for a coffee mug that looks like it's right in front of your face, but the mug is actually 3 feet to the left. You are completely convinced of your reality. Your brain is telling you exactly where the object is, but your optics are fundamentally broken.
That is a perfect analogy.
When you are going through immense grief, isolation, or the kind of burnout Dave experienced, your internal optics are shattered. Trying to fix your life alone in that state is like trying to drive a car with a smashed windshield. You desperately need a co-pilot to tell you where the road actually is.
And, you know, the connection between that deep emotional survival and the daily habits we discussed earlier is so critical. The lessons from these extreme environments, whether it's wingsuit flying or military operations, aren't about becoming a hardened, emotionless warrior who never feels pain.
Right. It's not about being a robot.
No, not at all. They are about developing radical honesty with yourself and understanding your own limitations.
That's why picking up the toilet paper roll matters. It's about auditing your life and shrinking that massive table of concern down to the tiny pin drop of what you actually control.
Precisely. Building your brain's tenacity by doing the laundry, choosing the slightly harder thing when no one is watching, is what builds the baseline neural architecture. So that when the uninvited trauma hits, you have the structural resilience to actually survive it.
Yeah, that baseline is everything.
And resilience also means finding healthy ways to turn down the static of the world before it deafens you.
Like the post-flow state we talked about.
Exactly. That might be intense physical exertion, finding a deep creative flow state, or honestly, simply taking a long walk without your phone to let your nervous system reset.
Yeah, just leaving the phone behind.
And most importantly, resilience is having the humility to raise your hand and ask for a co-pilot when your goggles get foggy.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, when you wake up tomorrow morning? I think it means redefining what success actually looks like in your day-to-day life.
I couldn't agree more.
The ultimate luxury isn't hitting a specific towering dollar amount in your bank account or achieving a flawless public persona. The ultimate luxury is the freedom to use the word no. It is the peaceful, quiet excitement of waking up on a Saturday and having absolutely no idea what you want to do next, but knowing with absolute certainty that you are mentally equipped to handle whatever comes.
Because if you don't define what enough is for yourself, the pursuit of more will eventually net you less.
That's a great point.
You will inevitably sacrifice the human connection, the peace of mind, and the spontaneous experiences that make life worth living in the first place.
Which leaves us with this final thought for you to mull over as you go about your day. If you grind for the next 10 years, aggressively sacrificing every holiday, every relaxed weekend, and every meaningful relationship just to perfectly achieve your ultimate towering ambition.
Yeah.
Did you actually win the game? Or did you just become the most successful prisoner of your own ambition?
Man, the depth of this discussion has been incredible. Thanks for breaking it all down with me.
Thank you for sharing the insights, and thank you all for listening. We'll catch you on the next one.